Adult Swim is essentially suffering from the same advanced aging condition that Cartoon Network had. It's only 22 years old, but it feels older. They are both now at a crossroads. With this WB Discovery merger making it hard just to stream their shows, how will this network survive? Well, Adult Swim has always made room for Cartoon Network. Now it's time for Cartoon Network to return the favor. Now in their 30s and 20s, Cartoon Network and Adult Swim appear to be coming to the terms with the fact that they're old and they need to do something different. This era of streaming everything has been a lot for some of these older networks to adapt to, and the situation with Cartoon Network and their owners, Warner Brothers, has been dramatic behind the scenes. As a recap, their owners, Warner Media and Warner Brothers, all together were sucked up in this excessive corporate merger with AT&T and Discovery, where the CEO of Discovery automatically became the CEO of all of it. Unfortunately, this guy, Zaslav, is not a fan of the Cartoon Network, or really any animation, comics, or anything fun and cool in general, as he's been shutting down a lot of productions and taking down shows from streaming, almost like he's trying to erase them from existence. A justification on these cuts were made around Warner Brothers just wanting to focus on theatrical film releases rather than streaming projects, and a way to cut costs, like they're trying to save money as if they don't already have an unlimited budget. Just recently, word got out that Warner Brothers tried to cancel an upcoming movie they had already made about Wile E. Coyote in the real world, all to obtain a $30 million tax write-off. They got caught red-handed valuing money over something longtime fans of Looney Tunes would love to see. And because of the backlash, it appears that the studio changed their mind on canceling it, but they still don't want it. They're going to sell the movie to some other distributor for streaming rights. Even though they've allowed Looney Tunes to still be available for streaming in full, this new Warner Brothers seems to be against rebooting their old material and making new material out of their old material. What's good about this era of corporate greed is that smaller networks like Cartoon Network are still willing to do whatever they can to appease their fans. Their whole 30-year birthday celebration was a nostalgic thank you note to everyone who grew up watching them. The network's edgy late-night version, Adult Swim, isn't quite as old as the network itself yet, but they've always been good to its fans as well. For 2 decades now, Adult Swim has been the king of animation for teens and adults. It was only until around 2021, around the same time the merger happened, that they started slipping in quality, more than usual. More of their original shows were getting canceled and less of their really good shows were staying on air. They only have 3 or 4 good original shows airing now, when they used to have 9 or 10. And even those 3 or 4 shows have been starting to show their age. So what is Adult Swim doing about this? Well, first, let's go back to the beginning. Originally, Cartoon Network's head programmer, Mike Lazo, wanted a block of content for adults who might be up watching TV after 11 p.m. At first, it was uncensored cartoons or lightly edited anime, like with the Toonami Midnight Run. At this time, in the late 90s to early 2000s, 1/3 of Cartoon Network's audience were adults. With all those old cartoons the network was airing in the 90s, it brought in the views of a lot of adults nostalgic for the 70s and 80s. And since The Simpsons on Fox, primetime animation aimed at adults was growing in popularity, and it became a thing. Adult Swim had the right idea from the beginning. Comedies and action shows based on the old shows adults of that era remembered watching when they were young. And since Cartoon Network was already a broadcasting hub for Hanna-Barbera cartoons, they was able to use those same characters and make new material with them. It started with Space Ghost Coast to Coast, basically the pilot series for the whole Adult Swim brand. Based on Hanna-Barbera's Space Ghost cartoon from the late 60s, Coast to Coast parodied the late-night talk show format. As the bulk of the series would air in the mid to late 90s, it would inspire the majority of Adult Swim's content from 2001 going forward. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, The Brack Show, C-Lab 2021, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Toonami, and The Eric Andre Show were all inspired by or directly spun off from Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Adult Swim originally intended to go on air for the first time on April Fool's Day 2001, but was delayed to September.
Sundays at 10, it's all kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. That's when there'll be new shows. New shows.
Their first non-original programming included Home Movies, a show bought from its original network, UPN. They would also broadcast one of my favorite anime, Cowboy Bebop. Then, of course, they had their original shows. A few months in, they switched out Cowboy Bebop with something a bit more in line with the other shows they had. They would show the Rocky and Bullwinkle Show and Popeye, again catering to those adults who remember these shows from decades ago. Adult Swim started being a foster's home for canceled animated shows. Outside of Home Movies, they would air shows like Futurama and Family Guy. Starting in 2003, Adult Swim aired 5 nights a week, where it used to be only 2 nights a week. It was definitely rising in prominence and viewership during the 2000s. What started out as being kind of a joke really became its own separate thing from Cartoon Network, in that they had their own Nielsen ratings, their own studio, their own influence. Adult Swim had a part in making Family Guy as popular as it was, and getting it back on air after being canceled. From 2007 to the early 2010s, Adult Swim was in its peak era. They expanded to 7 nights a week, made a home for King of the Hill reruns, and revived Toonami. First as another April Fool's joke, they revived Toonami, but seeing how the fans actually wanted this, they brought it back full time and made Saturday Night Adult Swim Toonami. This was a great period for Adult Swim, and ironically, on the other side of the network, Cartoon Network was actually doing pretty bad. I went over in another video how Cartoon Network was a tragic shell of its former self. All of their best shows were either ending or getting canceled, and they didn't have enough new shows coming out to replace the old ones. They decided at some point in this decline to produce shows that older kids would like, and this surely had something to do with the success of Adult Swim. Adult Swim and Cartoon Network kept good ties with Seth MacFarlane and kept airing Family Guy reruns while producing more original shows that really stood out, like Rick and Morty, just to name one. They got into the nostalgic reboot craze of the late 2010s and brought back Samurai Jack in 2017 and Fooly Cooly in 2018, even though no one really wanted that. But outside of Aqua Teen Hunger Force being canceled after 11 seasons, it was really another decade of success and great shows. But then something happened, and the fall of Adult Swim would begin. The decline started around 2018 when Adult Swim started losing the syndication rights to various animated programs. They'd lose the airing rights of King of the Hill and The Cleveland Show to Comedy Central, and the rights of Family Guy and Bob's Burgers to both FX and Disney. These deals weren't really official until the 2020s, but Family Guy leaving them hit pretty hard. In 2019, AT&T would announce that everything under Turner Broadcasting and Warner Media was getting reorganized. This, of course, would solidify as the Warner Bros. Discovery takeover in 2022. Another big hit to Adult Swim was the retiring of its vice president and longtime producer Mike Lazo in 2019. As the creator and producer of Space Ghost Coast to Coast and most of Adult Swim's shows, he was kind of the heart and soul of Adult Swim. They would have layoffs in 2020 and have to deal with a lot of shifting in divisions and bosses due to the whole merger. On a positive note, they got back the airing rights to Futurama and King of the Hill, and HBO Max's adult animation team was joining Adult Swim. I suppose that's good. But then several of their newer shows like Laser Wolf and Final Space were canceled and removed from their website, a part of the insane cost-cutting Warner Bros. Discovery was doing. So in 2022, Adult Swim is starting to look a lot like Cartoon Network in 2008, past its prime. But in 2023, things are starting to look up. In May, the Adult Swim lineup moved up to 7 p.m., giving it more time on air. This was done after Cartoon Network ratings showed that 68% of their viewership between 6 and 8 p.m. were over 18 years old. Soon after starting this new schedule, they premiered a new animated show called Unicorn Warriors Eternal, which proved to work really well for their demographic and brought an increase in viewers. This plan to move up Adult Swim to 7 p.m. has been working so well that they've extended that to 6 p.m. This just started happening in August. This is all based on the fact that truly, Cartoon Network's original demographic of kids 6 through 12 aren't watching TV like that anymore. These days, kids are actually watching most of their content through streaming and on mobile devices, picking exactly what they want to watch whenever they want to watch it. And kids like to just sit there and replay things they like over and over again. That's why Cocomelon has over 100 billion views. It's a channel on a streaming site, and it's for children. This is the kind of stuff they spend their time watching now. This could be seen as the very scary realization that networks dedicated to children are becoming obsolete, like CD players. Luckily, Cartoon Network and Adult Swim are willing to adapt to the changes. Working with them is the fact that people over 18 are getting kinda overwhelmed with all the streaming options they have, and it's slowly going back to how cable TV was. Some people are cutting down on the apps altogether and embracing free TV. Like, yo, I'll just watch whatever's on. I can't make up my mind. I've been leaning more towards that myself. And some people, believe it or not, still use cable. Adult Swim and Cartoon Network recognizes that they have loyal fans out there who grew up watching Cartoon Network and are now watching Adult Swim. The numbers don't lie, so they know what they have to do. Starting Adult Swim at 5 p.m. now, instead of 6, the first few hours would feature a new block called Checkered Past, reruns of classic Cartoon Network shows like Courage the Cowardly Dog and Dexter's Lab. While truly understanding the wide range animation can have, the folks over Adult Swim and Cartoon Network want to cooperate more and cross over with shows that adults, teens, and even children can enjoy. Under this enormous conglomerate of content, some of what made Adult Swim what it is has gotten lost. Some of the Adult Swim classics like Frisky Dingo, Lucy, Daughter of the Devil, and even one of my favorites, China, Illinois, are being deleted from the WBD streaming service, now known as Max. Everything in that vault that they own is at risk of being digitally erased. This is why physical media is important. This is why restoring and preserving media is important. Because there's just so much content out there, any of it could easily get lost, destroyed, and forgotten. This is one of the reasons why I do this channel. Things need to be remembered. History has been made, and stories need to be told. With everything digital being put at risk, maybe it's time to embrace old technology. I hear the new video game consoles still play Blu-ray discs and DVDs. Buy more physical media and talk about it more online, because if we let them, these corporations are going to just do whatever they want. They could erase and rewrite history and Mandela effect the hell out of all of us. But overall, the future is actually looking really good for Adult Swim. They even brought back Aqua Teen Hunger Force for its 12th season, after teasing at it for a year in 2022. By joining with Cartoon Network instead of being completely separate, they will transition from whatever Cartoon Network is airing to the nostalgic Checkered Past block, and then that new Unicorn action show, and then whatever Adult Swim is airing. A few years from now, it's possible that Adult Swim and Cartoon Network will end up just being one big network entirely. A network that shows animation for everyone aged 13 to 99. It might even get a brand new name like Animation Station or something. But I prefer how it's set up now. Different names, different times. Each side gets 12 hours. Knowing your audience and being able to adjust and adapt is what's going to keep networks like these relevant. And despite how unlikable and unpredictable their corporate bosses are, Cartoon Network and Adult Swim are dedicated to their fans. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you like random nostalgia and interesting coincidences surrounding said nostalgia, and I will see ya next week.